And we start on this Friday morning with President Trump now denying reports that he used vulgar language during a meeting about immigration. The reported comments provoking swift and harsh condemnation from people all around the world. Good morning to you. I'm John Scott.
And I'm Heather Childers on this Friday. Happy Friday to you. Very busy one, though.
Happy Friday. It's been a busy week, but we've got another hour of news ahead.
Yeah, all things will happen, we're sure. Sources reporting that the president insulted less developed and third world countries in that meeting, asking why the U.S. let so many of their citizens in. Now, many critics calling the alleged statements alarming and racist, but the president is pushing back. John Roberts joining us now live from the White House with more on this. Hi, John.
Good morning to you. You know, the president is pushing back despite numerous confirmations that Fox News has gotten from people inside and outside the White House that the president referred to countries like El Salvador and Haiti, Honduras, some African nations as S-holes when he was in a discussion with several members of Congress, including a number of senators and House members on both the Democratic and the Republican sides, and they're talking about a fix for DACA. The president, again, despite those multiple confirmations, tweeting out this morning, quote, "The language used by me at the DACA meeting was tough, but this was not the language used. What was really tough was the outlandish proposal made, a big setback for DACA." Earlier this morning, Bill Hemmer asked the White House advisor for strategic communications, Mercedes Schlapp, about what the president said. Let's watch that exchange.
That language was not used.
Well, I was not in the room. I was not in the room, and it was very clear that he, in his tweet, his tweet stands, which was the language was not used.
But again, multiple sources say to Fox News that when the subject was broached about these are countries that had temporary protected status for a lot of people. You remember the president just rescinded that status for people from El Salvador in the 2001 earthquake earlier this week. It was brought up that, well, maybe people from those countries should get priority in a visa lottery system. And that's when the president started going off about it, saying, why are we taking people from these S-hole countries? Why don't we take more people from countries like Norway? A short time ago, Senator Dick Durbin, who was in that meeting, rebuffed the president's denial that he ever said those words. Listen here.
He said, Haitians, do we need more Haitians? And then he went on and we started to describe the immigration from Africa that was being protected in this bipartisan measure. That's when he used these vile and vulgar comments, calling the nations they come from holes. The exact word used by the president, not just once, but repeatedly.
While the argument over the president's language no doubt will continue, getting to the substance of the issue, how to fix DACA, there still seems to be an awful lot of daylight between the White House and Congress over a plan. The plan that Senators Durbin and Graham brought to the Oval Office yesterday was unacceptable to the president, who tweeted at length about it this morning, saying, quote, "The so-called bipartisan DACA deal presented yesterday to myself and a group of Republican senators and congressmen was a big step backwards. Wall was not properly funded. Chain and lottery were made worse, and USA would be forced to take large numbers of people from high-crime countries which are doing badly. I want a merit-based system of immigration and people who will help take our country to the next level. I want safety and security for our people. I want to stop the massive inflow of drugs. I want to fund our military, not do a Dem defund. Because of the Democrats not being interested in life and safety, DACA has now taken a big step backwards. The Dems will threaten shutdown, but what they are really doing is shutting down our military at a time when we need it most. Get smart, make America great again." Heather, what's not known at this point is after the president had that made-for-TV moment on Tuesday, where he had that hour-long televised meeting with 22 members of Congress, he really appeared to get a lot of political capital from that. But between the tweet yesterday about FISA and then his comments last night about these nations and immigration, it's unclear at this point how much of that political capital that he earned on Tuesday he has left. Heather?
Well, here's what we do know. 1 week from tonight, we're facing that government shutdown. A lot of work to get done until then. Thank you so much, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
President Trump speaking with the Wall Street Journal this week, touting progress and outlining future plans nearly 1 year after taking office. Mr. Trump addressing a number of topics, including North Korea, infrastructure, and economic advancements. The president told the Journal, quote, If you remember, the first quarter was a very low GDP when Obama's last quarter. It was the slowest growing recovery, a very minor recovery, but it's the worst recovery they've had since the Great Depression, and our country was headed in the wrong direction. We were going down a long way. I believe if the opposing party got in, I believe the stock market would have fallen 50% instead of gone up to the number it's gone up. Joining me now, Glenn Hall, the chief editor for the Dow Jones Newswires. Let's talk about that for a minute, because it was just, 6 days ago, the stock market hit 25,000.
Right.
Today, it was tickling 26,000, 252 points away. Bunch of stocks have set all-time highs already this morning. I mean, clearly, Wall Street likes what this White House is doing.
There have been a lot of signals in that direction, a lot of optimism out there. And the president, in this interview with our Wall Street Journal team down in Washington, made clear that he sees that as a direct result of the policies. He cited, for example, all the comments we've heard from various companies after tax reform was passed and how they see that benefiting the bottom line. We see Walmart talking about raising wages. We see Toyota talking about investing in the United States. He said all of those things wouldn't have happened without these advancements that his agenda has brought.
So why is it, and John Roberts alluded to this in his report from the White House, it's sometimes 2 steps forward and then 3 steps back, or maybe 2 steps back. The president steps on his own message when things like, referring to some of these third world countries in the way he is reported to have done so, fires up his critics so much.
Yeah, this president doesn't act like a typical politician. We've all known that from the beginning, right? And this is, as some would say, Trump being Trump. He's just trying to be candid and down to earth in these things, but he doesn't realize that there can be repercussions for, getting that blunt.
Yeah, he was a New York developer. You use some tough language, I suppose. When you're in business meetings, you're blunt. But that's not necessarily what you want to say, the kinds of things you want to say when you're the president of the United States.
Yeah, I think we see a little bit of a disconnect there because the president is accustomed to when having a closed-door meeting, that's a closed-door meeting.
Yeah.
It doesn't exactly work that way all the time in Washington.
And he tweeted out that he should have had a recorder running at this meeting because he says he is being mischaracterized in the things that he says.
That's right. And in our interview with him, he was talking about how much he wants a DACA deal to get done and how important he thinks it is, and that he really has sympathy and support for all of these folks who have been here through no fault of their own since their childhood, and how valuable the jobs are that they do in this country. So he made those points, but he also was really adamant there must be a wall. A wall must be a part of this. And he's very concerned, as he mentioned in those clips, on those tweets, about this issue of the lottery and how random it is, and not as the strong vetting that he wants, and this idea that if you have a relative in this country, it makes it easier for you to get in this country. He doesn't see those things as being good for the country, and he wants those issues to be addressed.
DACA is an issue that was left to him by primarily President Obama, but also previous presidents. And another one, North Korea. I mean, those are 2 issues that previous presidents have just sort of kicked the ball down the road, and now he's left with these issues to deal with, and not everybody likes the way that he's approaching those deals, but he's dealing with them.
Yeah, that's what he said exactly to our Wall Street Journal team down in Washington during this interview. He said, this shouldn't be on my desk, but it was left on my desk. It should have been handled all the way back by the Clinton administration as far as he was concerned. But he said, now that it is on my desk, I'm going to get it done. And he made the point, which was very interesting, that he's been, all of this sort of tough talk out in front doesn't necessarily reflect what might be happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, indicated that, he could get along with Kim Jong-un.
He said he probably has a good relationship with him, but he wouldn't say whether he's had any direct contact with him, wouldn't deny it, wouldn't say he did. But his point was he's been really setting it up so that he can have those relationships. And he was also reflecting on how Chinese President Xi has been more supportive of this administration's efforts.
But he calls Kim Little Rocket Man. Kim calls him a dotard. And we're to believe that they can actually get along?
I guess he's putting it in this context of the art of a deal, right, where you talk tough and then you have negotiating power from strength. And he said, look, you see that from me a lot regarding his tweets. He goes, but then later on you see somebody's my best friend. That was his comment.
Well, we'll see what happens. It is certainly interesting every day at 1600 Pennsylvania. Glenn Hall from Dow Jones News Service. Glenn, have a good weekend. Thank you. Heather.
Well, something else interesting happening. The House passing the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, but not everyone is on board with it. Opponents saying that it allows the government to spy on Americans. Congressman Doug Collins is here to break down the specifics for us. Coming up next. And chaos in California. Rescue teams searching for dozens of missing people after those deadly mudslides. What crews are up against?
There's a house just right there that I know my kids used to play with those kids, and the house, there's no sign of the house. It's not even there. It's hurting all of us. It's very, very heartbreaking.
It's happening. February 23rd, Publishers Clearinghouse awards the $5,000 a week Forever Prize. Win $5,000 a week for your life. Then after that, someone you choose gets $5,000 a week for their life. Enter at PCH.com before it's too late. And February 23rd, win forever.
Taken at the first sign of a cold, Cold Ease can make your cold 42% shorter. It might not make your party 42% better. Cold Ease is clinically proven to shorten your cold by nearly half, guaranteed.
Are you a veteran, own a home, and need cash? You need to know about the New Day 100 Home Loan for Veterans. It lets you borrow up to 100% of your home's value, not just 80%. And that can mean a lot more money for you and your family. With our military service, veterans like us have earned a valuable VA benefit, the right to apply for a VA home loan. The New Day 100 VA loan lets you refinance your mortgages, consolidate your credit card debt, put cash in the bank, and lower your payments an average of $640 a month. And New Day will even pay for your appraisal. That could save you up to $500 or more. So call New Day USA. They look at your whole financial picture, not just your credit score. And they'll do everything they possibly can to get you approved. Call them today.
Go to newdayusa.com or call 1-844-367-1581.
Let's face it, everyone would love a smartphone these days, but not everyone wants unlimited everything or a large data plan with a big monthly bill. For people who just need GPS, a good camera, and a few apps, there's TracFone, the original no-contract wireless provider. Smartphone plans start as low as $15. There's no contract, and you get unlimited carryover, so you keep all the minutes, text, and data that you paid for. Right now, TracFone has phones from top brands like Samsung and LG at very affordable prices. They have large touchscreens, take great photos, and give you access to thousands of apps. Everything you need. Look, TracFone has nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. There's no activation or cancellation fees, and you can even keep your number. Talk about a win-win-win. TracFone is available at retailers nationwide. Visit TracFone.com for more information and special offers. Okay, it's time to pick a used car.
I really don't want to get ripped off.
Carfax can help. Search millions of used cars and find a great deal at Carfax.com.
Yeah, show me the Carfax.
Only Carfax gives you the most accurate price based on a car's history.
Wow, look at all the great deals.
Oh, you're welcome.
Show me the Carfax.
Start your used car search and get free Carfax reports at Carfax.com.
Well, the House advancing the renewal of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, the act authorizing surveillance of foreigners outside America. Now, supporters say that it prevents terrorist attacks. Opponents say that it violates the privacy of Americans. The House getting enough votes to advance the renewal to the Senate. And this is despite President Trump's maybe inconsistent tweets, some would say, about his own position. Press Secretary Sarah Sanders cleared it all up. Listen.
The President fully supports the 702 and was happy to see that it passed the House today, but he does have some overall concern with the FISA program more generally. The President doesn't feel that we should have to choose between protecting American citizens and protecting their civil liberties. He wants to do both, and that's exactly what he's going to do.
And Georgia Congressman Doug Collins joins us now to talk a little bit more about this. Thank you very much for joining us, first of all.
Heather, it's good to be with you. How are you?
I'm great. So hash this out a little bit for us. Exactly what is the FISA section that we're talking about here? Because it's not the entire thing.
That's exactly right. And I think what the president actually spoke of was a true concern that most of us have, and that is protecting and balancing personal liberties and civil rights in the Fourth Amendment with the awesome responsibility of protecting us from foreign attacks. And I think the 702 is dealing with foreign surveillance of actors, bad actors who want to do us harm. Now, there are other sections of FISA that deal with Americans and how we deal with those, and those are things that got conflated in this debate. And I think what the president was simply saying was there's certain area of FISA we need to continue to look at. I know the House Intelligence Committees and the Senate and the Judiciary Committees are looking at other sections, but on 702, what we have found is a program that worked, and we actually added in warrant protections to protect even further Americans' interest in this.
That's what I wanted to ask you about, because the question is specifically Americans who are basically caught in the crossfire of some of this communication. How are they protected?
Well, there's multiple protections in there as far as how the information is used, and especially if there is an information which an American citizen or an agency wants to use it for a criminal interest against an American, there has to be a warrant filed, which is what we have seen all along. But we actually have that now into this law that we passed out yesterday. That is going to be something that is a further protection. And again, at the same time, going back to making sure our intelligence communities can do what they need to do. One of the big problems that came out of 9/11 was this siloing effect, where you had each agency sort of had their own intelligence gathering and no one was sharing. What we don't want to go back to either through warrant requirements or blanket warrant requirements is where that you're siloing this kind of information where the agencies can't cooperate with each other to make sure that we're safe. This strikes the proper balance, and the questions on our liberties are always needed, but also at the same time they have to be balanced with national security. I think what we have done and what the president has said yesterday, I agree with. We have struck that balance, and that's why we need to get this continued.
So it's passed. The renewal vote has passed in the House. Now it heads to the Senate. Rand Paul was on America's Newsroom earlier today. As I'm sure you know, he's threatened to filibuster at this point. Technically, he's not going to be able to filibuster, but at the very least, he can delay the vote. Here's what he had to say about it.
The grant of power is to spy on foreigners and foreign lands. I'm all for that. We need to protect our country. But we don't use the Constitution for these foreigners. We just grab up all their information. There are a lot of innocent people who are in here, and it should not be searched for American data without a warrant. All we're asking is go to a judge and have some evidence to get started. Warrants aren't that difficult to get.
Now, how much of a delay would happen if what he's suggesting went through?
Well, what he's suggesting is really basically what is in the bill. If they're wanting it for American purposes, for a domestic issue, those have to be getting for a warrant. I mean, I think that's the concern. I think maybe semantics here is what is happening. That is what is happening as we go forward in this bill. I think the one thing that is interesting here is you look at this, you have to balance the aspects of personal liberties and freedoms with the national security aspect. Look, Senator Paul can make his points, and I think he is. But I think the one thing that he is that I think is lost here is that we did add a warrant protection in there for this information used for domestic crime on American citizens. So there is protection built in there. And it's not, remember, this starts with foreign intelligence. Right. It is not directed at Americans. This section deals with the foreign side of this, not the domestic side of this. And so, and it really, sometimes it does a disservice to bring up other areas and problems with this while we're conflating it with the foreign aspect of this.
Yeah, there's a lot to be done. If Section 702 does not get reauthorized, what is at stake?
Really, our national security is at stake. This is an issue that it cannot turn off. It cannot delay itself, because every day there are people waking up who want to do us harm simply because we're the freest, most prosperous country in the world. They do not like us because of our freedoms and who we are. We've got to be able to have that broad range spectrum to know where those threats are, to where those on the front lines, our soldiers and our seamen, our airmen, are all out there right now, depending on intelligence information at this very second to make sure that not only are they safe, but we're safe back here as well. This could not turn off. I think the president understands that. He's been a leader on this, and he understands the balance that needs to be struck. So I think what happened yesterday was a good showing of that there's need to always be conscious of our personal liberties and freedoms, which are also issues that we're dealing with in other areas of FISA. But on 702, which is the foreign side of this is one that needs to be done because we can't afford this program to go dark.
All right. Well, it's headed to the Senate. We'll see what happens. Thank you very much for joining us and describing it all for us. Congressman Collins, thank you. Have a great weekend.
It's always good to be with you. Take care. Bye-bye.
President Trump's war with the media rages on, but could his critics' attacks be working against them? Our media panel with their thoughts on that. Plus, There could be another major policy shift on the horizon. We are awaiting an announcement on the Iran nuclear deal.
When our country used to flex its muscle with battleships like the USS Iowa, the world would listen. It's time we return to the America I remember. Hi, I'm William Devane. There are dangerous forces everywhere pulling our country apart, threatening our economy and our way of life. That's why I'm going to do two things: support our military and buy gold from Rosalind Capital. I've never felt safe relying on paper money to protect my assets. That's why I buy gold from Rosalind. With Rosalind, what you order is what you get. No gimmicks, no nonsense, no hassle. We're all safer with our ships patrolling the seas. And my assets are a whole lot safer with gold from Rosalind Capital. So ask yourself, are you safe?
Call now to get your free gold, silver, and IRA kits. Call 800-630-8900. 800-630-8900. 800-630-8900.
I used to feel like my metabolism was stuck. Sound familiar? Now you can boost your metabolism, lose weight fast, and have more energy.
Introducing Turbo 13 from Nutrisystem. Lose up to 13 pounds and 7 inches overall in your first month. Lose weight fast. Money back guaranteed.
My energy is through the roof.
I have more stamina than ever.
I'm living healthier and happier.
I'm Marie, and I lost 50 pounds on Nutrisystem.
Order your 28-day plan right now, and we'll rush you Turbo 13 with specially designed meals, plus 1 week of all-new NutriCurve bars to curb cravings free, 1 week of Turbo Shakes to help shrink your belly free, and 1 week of all-new Turbo Boosters to rev your metabolism free. Call or go online in the next 2 minutes, and we'll even throw in FedEx shipping free. Lose up to 13 pounds and 7 inches overall in your first month.
Boost your metabolism, your energy, and your weight loss. Call or go online now.
Go online or call 888-871-THIN right now and get Turbo 13 with bar shakes and turbo boosters free.
A win against the NFL. Dave Portnoy claims they stole his slogan. Now, after the league got scared straight, the Barstool Sports founder reacts on Tucker Carlson Tonight.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
What if you could lose fat in just a few hours?
I don't know what to say. I'm just in shock.
You can with Sono Bello.
It seems no matter how much you work out or diet, there are parts of your body that just don't seem to change.
I went to the gym, I worked out at home, I bought videos.
No matter what I did, that bulge was still there.
With its advanced micro laser technology,
Sono Bello gently removes that targeted fat and shapes your body for life-changing results.
As America's #1 cosmetic surgery specialist, Sono Bello has performed over 100,000 personalized body and facial procedures, helping tens of thousands of people change their lives.
After 5 years trying to get rid of that roll of fat, Sono Bello did it in 1 day.
Call for your free no-obligation consultation today and get $250 off your Sono Bello body.
Payment plans are available.
Call 888-317-1425 or go to sonobello.com.
Welcome back. We are awaiting President Trump's decision on the Iran nuclear deal. An announcement is expected later today. The president must decide whether he will continue to exempt Iran from a series of tough economic sanctions or reimpose them. If the sanctions are reinstated, the U.S. would violate a deal that was brokered by President Obama. Obama, you may recall, lifted the sanctions in exchange for a rollback of Iran's nuclear development program. President Trump has called the agreement an embarrassment for the United States.
President Trump, no stranger to criticism from the public and media of all stripes, many of them parts of the so-called never-Trumpers. But some argue the ongoing attacks on the president could be working against the Never Trump movement's mission. Media Buzz host Howard Kurtz writing, some of the president's fiercest critics on the right are starting to recognize how their side's animosity is burning out of control. The relentless negativity of the Never Trumpers actually helps him by making his detractors seem obsessed and unwilling to credit him for just about anything. They give the president a big target, one that is widely distrusted by his base, and they can seem incredibly condescending toward the man in the White House. Let's bring in our panel. Erin Delmore is senior political correspondent for Bustle.com. Beverly Hallberg is president of District Media DC. She's also a contributor for the Washington Examiner and The Hill as well. So the title of Howard Kurtz's column, Erin, asked this question: are never-Trumpers being consumed by their own fiery denunciations? Are they?
Kurtz's point is that it doesn't do the president or the Republican Party or even critics of President Trump any favors when they say every day that the sky is falling. Kurtz's point is that that only dilutes their argument. And he's saying that it leads to this idea that the bar is lowered for this president. Now, the footage that you're showing right now, that was President Trump on Tuesday meeting with lawmakers on Capitol Hill about a deal for DACA. And Kurtz's point is that that was a good moment for the president. He looked presidential. He looked like he belonged in that room and had a command over the proceedings that were going on. But Kurtz is also saying when these never-Trumpers lower the bar and say that he is misfit for the presidency, they've changed the standard by which he should be judged, and that it's a disservice to their own movement.
Some Republicans, Beverly, have warmed to this president, despite the fact that, well, he was a Democrat before he became a Republican and ran for the presidency. But the love affair from really either party is pretty fleeting, it seems.
Yeah, for Republicans, I would say that they just didn't know what they were going to get from Donald Trump. I even think many people who ended up voting for him weren't quite sure what he was going to do. But when you take a look at his first year, I think tax reform is up there with one of his biggest achievements, as well as the nomination of Judge Gorsuch. So I think those who were never Trumpers, when they see that he's been conservative, I've seen them come out and praise him. But I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens in 2018. I think in some ways you're going to see the president move towards more of a moderate to liberal agenda. Infrastructure is going to be a big push for him, and for fiscal conservatives, that's not the direction they want to go. So we're going to have to see what happens in 2018.
So you think it'll be a different presidency, Beverly? The 2017 was the year he sort of appealed to his base, and he may go a little different direction.
We'll have to wait and see. Now, he did talk about infrastructure spending even in the campaign. I think part of this, he's just going to get to some of his agenda that is a little bit more moderate. But even when you take a look at what's happened with immigration reform, even some of the positions that he's taken on DACA are a little bit different than what he said in the campaign trail. I find it fascinating. And the 1 hour live meeting that he held, even some Republicans who were more moderate had to step in and say, Mr. President, we don't want a clean DACA bill. We need to make sure that we also have border security at the same time. So while he claims to be a deal maker, what I wonder is how much is he leading the charge versus saying, just bring me something to sign and I'll sign it. So we'll have to see where he lands, because frankly, we don't know on every issue.
Even some of the president's detractors, Erin, and there's probably no more vocal detractor than Joe Scarborough, the former Republican congressman who's now hosting a talk show over on MSNBC. He said this week, the entire mainstream media, we are reflexively anti-Trump. So if the media, Erin, can't give the president, credit for anything, what does that do to the message?
Well, that's lumping all media into one category. And we've spoken a couple of times on this program about how there's opinion media and then there's straight media. And obviously he's speaking about just the one. But that argument that there's a group that is against the president, it's something that can't be taken as a whole. But to Beverly's point, I want to point out that when the president was talking about DACA and about immigration reform, he did look like he was commanding that meeting, but he also looked like he was waffling on his principles. And that's not something that is an issue for the liberal media, the way that you want to talk about it, John. It's an issue for Republicans in his own party. It's like watching the president on Twitter the other morning reverse his stance on whether the House should or shouldn't vote for the bill reauthorizing FISA Section 702. It's like watching the president go on Twitter to talk about his mental status and to call himself a very stable genius. These are issues that don't just affect people who are against the president, people who would have preferred a different Republican candidate. These are newsworthy items regardless of who is in the White House.
And they are items that he brought the attention onto himself.
Right. He did. He knows that he can use the power of his Twitter feed and the power of the cameras that swirl around the Oval Office to make any story a big news story. And surprisingly, that's what he chose to do last weekend. Even in that press conference we saw at Camp David, one by one, Republican Party leaders came up and touted their accomplishments from 2017. And they should be touting them. They got a bunch of judicial confirmations through. They passed historic tax reform. Yeah. That's what the Republican in the party wants to talk about. But President Trump turned that press conference right back to a statement about his mental mental health.
We'll see if Beverly's prediction comes through and the White House takes a slightly different tack in 2018. Beverly Hallberg and Aaron Delmore. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, with the threat of a government shutdown just a week away, the White House is sending lawmakers back to the drawing board on immigration. We'll take a look at the potential path to an agreement. Plus, the window closing on rescue efforts 4 days after the deadly mudslides in California. The latest update on the search as families return home.
Cars twisted into houses, upside down cars, garages falling down, houses falling down. I've never seen anything like it.
I hated our bathtub, but who has time for a remodel? Not this family. And then there's the mess. Then I heard about Bathfitter. They came in and put a beautiful new bathtub right over our old one. Bathfitter also has seamless walls that provide a watertight fit. There's no mess, no demolition, and they get it done in as little as 1 day. Plus, they provide a lifetime guarantee. Thanks to Bathfitter, I have a bathtub I love.
Call today or learn more at bathfitter.com.
You know what they say about the early bird? He gets the best deal on the perfect hotel by using TripAdvisor. That's because TripAdvisor lets you start your trip on the right foot by comparing prices from over 200 booking sites to find the right hotel for you at the lowest price, saving you up to 30%. You'll be bathing in savings. TripAdvisor. Check the latest reviews and lowest prices.
A good enough dinner.
Hey, should I heat up some nuggets for us?
Isn't good or enough.
It's a plated night.
Yes.
So plan for great. Start at Plated.com. Pick from a wide variety of dinner options. All the shopping and measuring is done for you. So get together, share, enjoy. Go to Plated.com right now to get 50% off your first week of Plated Nights. That's up to a $79 value. This offer won't last, so go to Plated.com now.
Consumer Cellular makes it easy to stay in touch with family and stay within our budget.
Now our cell phone bill is only a fraction of what it used to be.
Our average customers get everything they need for about $25 a month, and plans start at only $15 a month with no contracts.
Consumer Cellular has a great choice of phones. Check out my new one. I picked this simple phone.
I use my son's old smartphone. Kept my number, too.
Consumer Cellular has been an approved AARP provider since 2008, and members get exclusive discounts.
It's a good thing Consumer Cellular is always there, because sometimes I need a little help.
Sometimes.
We're proud to have received the J.D. Power Award for highest customer service 3 times in a row.
Over the years, we've seen a lot of change.
We actually use change. Luckily, there are some things we can still afford.
Like Consumer Cellular.
Stop paying too much for wireless service. Switch to Consumer Cellular. And with our 30-day risk-free guarantee, it's easy. Call 1-800-691-0121. Go online or visit a Target store today.
On April 4th, the world's largest investment bank purchased $300 million of gold for their own account. What do they know that you don't? Investors are snapping up gold. This commodity is on the verge of an epic comeback. Gold and silver, opportunity of a lifetime.
You're seeing a lot of very big, very smart money move into precious metals. They get it. They know what's coming.
Call now and get this exclusive video. See why banks, billionaires, and financial experts are buying gold.
The richest guys who know what they're talking about, like Dalio and those guys, they're shifting into gold now.
Call Lear Capital at 1-800-452-5050 for your free video and special report, Banks, Billionaires, and Plan B. First-time callers receive this revolutionary gold note. It's a 1/20th gram of pure gold pressed into a paper-thin dollar-sized bill.
Everybody should have gold in their portfolio.
Get your free information and ask how you can receive up to $600 in free gold. Call 1-800-452-5050.
Right now, authorities are identifying the 17 people confirmed dead in the California mudslides. The oldest victim, 89, the youngest, just 3 years old. Senior correspondent Adam Housley live from Montecito, California. Adam?
Yeah, John, heartbreaking. That number expected to go up a little bit. 5 people now missing still. That number down from 43 last night. Look at this damage to my right, though, John. There were once 6 homes standing in this area. There's now just 1. All these boulders, all this debris was not here before Monday. We're talking about 5 inches of rain that brought all this down from the hillsides. As you come across, you can even see as the crews are going from house to house looking for survivors, they're also looking in debris like this. A car mangled into a tree and some other debris. You can see the actual piece of cloth there where they've done that famous orange X. It tells you when it was checked, if there was any fatalities inside and who checked it. Thankfully, there were no fatalities there. But if you keep coming across here, these spillways were all filled with water and rocks. They came roaring down, and now the rush is on, not only to try to find survivors, but also to clear the area in case any rain was to come. Thankfully, right now, there's no rain forecasted in the near future, but when it does come, they have to have this as clear as possible. John, look how big this boulder is. These are the type of things coming down, and they went through homes. They tore through everything. It's really hard to fathom. A lot of us here in Southern California have come to this area for vacations with your family. You come visit people here. You stop here along the way to Santa Barbara, which is right next door. So to see this disaster is truly hard to fathom. There are crews that have come in also from all over. I've seen some from Butte County, which is about an 8-hour drive from here, that have come down to try and help. But as we show you that house there, look at the flag out front right now. Next to it, the orange X as well. You can see how high on that home the mud went through. That's about 4 feet high. That raced through that home, tore through the side of it, and came out the other side. In fact, Keith, move this way towards me a little bit. We'll come over this way a little bit. Down here, if you look, all the way down this spillway, those were foundations. Now, there's just foundations left. There's nothing there. There were homes all the way down that direction. You can see way in the distance the debris. Some of those were once homes. Now it's a pile of rubble, in some cases a quarter mile away. Others went even further down. You can see cars all around the area too. And that's the problem as they go through these areas. That's why there's still people missing, is because you have to look under, in some cases, under boulders. Again, the positive news, John, at this hour is last night, when they gave the press conference, they said 43 people were missing, 17 dead, as young as 3, unfortunately, years old. And they were worried that that number of death would go up. They still say it probably is going to go up, but the good news, at least a little sliver of it, is that it's gone from 43 missing down to 5. And again, John, this is what there's going to see. This boil water, it remains in effect for anybody near here. And the entire area of Montecito, which is 10,000 people in this area, is under evacuation orders, mandatory evacuation orders. We're told for at least 2 more weeks. In some cases, the destruction is just so completely devastating that, I mean, again, this is a home, or was a home. That's all that's left. Next to it here, another home. That's all that's left. The front steps. I mean, you walk over here, you can see pipes coming out. You can see all sorts of metal that was once part of this, rebar. I mean, if you walk up here, this was somebody's front porch. Now it's a pile of rocks, and they're piling more on top as they're trying to clear the spillway behind me. But imagine being in this home, as we get back to you, John, and water and mud this high racing through at some cases 50 miles an hour. Back to you, John.
And the homes are just obliterated. They're just gone.
Gone. They're no longer in existence. I mean, that's what's left. You don't even know what it was, other than there was a foundation.
Unbelievable. Wow. The fury of Mother Nature. Adam Housley there in Montecito, California. Thanks, Adam.
Well, President Trump rejecting a bipartisan immigration deal crafted by half a dozen senators, arguing that the bill did not properly address chain migration or fund the border wall. But one of the authors, Senator Jeff Flake, says that the bill delivered on what the president has asked for. Listen.
We have an agreement that we're, the bipartisan group I'm talking about, the 6 of us working, that we're shopping among our colleagues now. We don't want to release details until we talk to more of our colleagues. All I can say is it has to get 60 votes. We're the only bipartisan deal in town. The president asked to, that was the call that he issued on the 4 principles, and this addresses all of them.
So let's bring in Bret Baier, anchor of Special Report. Bret, I should say, as we speak here, we're going to keep an eye on the Roosevelt Room, where the president is expected to appear and make a proclamation for Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and we'll take that live when he does appear right there. But in the meantime, let's talk about another Friday. And actually, he's there right now. Let's take this live.
I want to thank Secretary Carson, along with Isaac Newton Farris Jr., and the many distinguished guests for joining us here today. It's a great honor. Earlier this week, I had the tremendous privilege to join Isaac and Alveda to sign into law legislation redesignating the Martin Luther King Jr. National Historic Site to the Martin Luther King Jr. National Historic Park. The new law expands the area protected and historic sites for the future. Generations of Americans are becoming so important, and this is a great honor for us and a great honor to Dr. King. Today we gather in the White House to honor the memory of a great American hero, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. On January 15th, 1929, Martin Luther King Jr. was born in Atlanta, Georgia. He would go on to change the course of human history. As a young man, Dr. King decided to follow the calling of his father and grandfather to become a Christian pastor. He would later write that it was quite easy for me to think of a God of love, mainly because I grew up in a family where love was central. That is what Reverend King preached all of his life: love. Love for each other, for neighbors, and for our fellow Americans. Dr. King's faith and his love for humanity led him and so many other heroes to courageously stand up for civil rights of African Americans. Through his bravery and sacrifice, Dr. King opened the eyes and lifted the conscience of our nation. He stirred the hearts of our people to recognize the dignity written in every human soul. Today we celebrate Dr. King for standing up for the self-evident truth Americans hold so dear, that no matter what the color of our skin or the place of our birth, we are all created equal by God. This April we will mark a half-century since Reverend King was so cruelly taken from us by an assassin's bullet. But while Dr. King is no longer with us, his words and his vision only grow stronger through time. Today we mourn his loss, we celebrate his legacy, and we pledge to fight for his dream of equality, freedom, justice, and peace. I will now sign the proclamation making January 15th, 2018, the Martin Luther King Jr. federal holiday, and encourage all Americans to observe this day with acts of civic work and community service in honor of Dr. King's extraordinary life, and it was extraordinary indeed, and his great legacy. Thank you. God bless you all, and God bless America. And with that, I'd like to ask a great friend of mine, Secretary Carson, for remarks. Then we're going to be signing the very important proclamation. Thank you very much. Ben?
Thank you, Mr. President. It's an honor to be here today, celebrating this solemn occasion. And I thank you for signing legislation to designate the birthplace, church, and tomb of Dr. Martin Luther King as a National Historic Park. His monumental struggle for civil rights earned these places in his life, faith, and death the same honor as Mount Vernon and that famous humble log cabin in Illinois. This April, we will observe the 50th anniversary of Dr. King's assassination. I remember so vividly that day as a high school student in Detroit. Far from silencing his dream, death wrought him immortal in the American heart. His message of equality, justice, and the common dignity of man resounds today, urgently needed to heal the divisions of our age. Today we honor the legacy of the man who marched on Washington for jobs and freedom, achieving both for millions of Americans. of all races and backgrounds. But his legacy also calls us to remember where these ideas, equality, freedom, liberty, get their power. Our good efforts alone are not enough to lend them meaning. For by what shall I be called equal to another man? It cannot be by wealth, for there will always be one richer than me. It cannot be by strength, for there will always be one stronger than me. It cannot be by success or happiness or beauty or any other pieces of the human condition which are distributed through providence. So perhaps providence alone is the answer. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. With these familiar words, our Declaration of Independence recognizes the true author of our common dignity, one that is beyond every human law and institution. If we forget this source of our fundamental equality, then our fight to recognize it in our society will never be fulfilled. This is a truth that Dr. King carried with him from Selma to Montgomery, from a pulpit in Atlanta to the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, from a cell in Birmingham to the entire world. This year, we will not remember his slaying as the ending, but as a beginning, as a moment when his truth rose stronger than hatred and his cause larger than death, as a moment when he called to new life with his Creator, before whom all men shall one day stand in equal rank, bearing with them no riches but the content of their character. If we keep this conviction at the center of our every word and action, if we look upon our countrymen as brothers with a shared home and a common destination, then instead of meaningless words rolling off of our tongue, we will truly create one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we're going to have a word from Pastor Isaac Newton Ferris, the nephew of Dr. Martin Luther King.
President Trump, Vice President Pence, and to all assembled here. If my uncle were here today, the first thing he would say is, what are we or what are you doing for others? And that's why it was so important that my aunt Coretta Scott King returned to the Congress now about 10 years ago and asked that the meaning of the holiday be changed. We did not want the King holiday just to be a day of hero worship. As his nephew, I certainly think that he was one of the greatest Americans that we've produced. But it should not be a day of hero worship. And that's why the Congress agreed with my aunt and also made it a day of service. So that we, on that day, as a matter of fact, at the King Center, we refer to it as a day on, not a day off. It's not a day to hang out in the park or pull out the barbecue grill. It's a day to do something to help someone else. And that can be as simple as delivering someone's trash or picking up the newspaper for that elderly person who can't get to the end of the driveway. Bottom line, you're doing something that benefits someone other than yourself. That's the proper way to remember my uncle and the proper way to celebrate the King holiday. So, President Trump, thank you for taking the time to acknowledge this day. Thank you for remembering that we're all Americans, and on this day we should be united in love for all Americans. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
This is a great, an important day. Martin Luther King Jr. federal holiday 2018 by the President of the United States of America, a proclamation. Congratulations to him and to everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President, will you give an apology for the statement yesterday?
Mr. President, did you refer to African Asians? Did you refer to shitholes?
Mr. President, are you a racist? Mr. President, will you respond to these serious questions about your statement, sir?
No, Mr. President,
you're talking to the President, not you, sir. Mr. President, are you a racist?
Well, you've been watching a live event from the Roosevelt Room there, the president signing a proclamation in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And you could hear, obviously, some of the questions that were yelled there from some of the reporters. This coming on a day when the president has been accused of sending some derogatory tweets, making some derogatory statements, people calling him a racist, some people on other sides of the aisle, Democrats coming forward, making that claim. Bret Baier is standing by with us again, I believe. And Bret, who's, of course, the anchor of Special Report, you have to talk about the fact that this is happening on the day that's, it's been front and center in the conversation with everyone, the president and racism.
Sure, Heather. And we should point out that this was long on the schedule, that the president was going to make this proclamation. He was going to sign this, and they were going to have some event. This just didn't, rise up after the comment now heard around the world from the Oval Office meeting on immigration. It is quite stark, if you think about it, to listen to the questions there being yelled at the President of the United States as he's leaving the room from signing a proclamation about MLK Day. Are you a racist, Mr. President? Those are the charges by many lawmakers and opinion folks after that comment in the Oval Office. Just a point about this event. You saw Dr. Ben Carson, who is the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, deliver a very passionate speech. He's spoken about this and the plight of African Americans for a long time, growing up in a poor Detroit inner city home to a single mother and becoming a famous neurosurgeon and now Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. I think the contrast is pretty stark if you think about what has happened, transpired over the last 24 hours and this event.
Yeah,
it's
really
clearly
is.
not over for this White House.
No, and as you said, this event had been planned previously, so it was an opportunity to focus on something entirely different, but instead we're brought back to this controversy, and there's a lot of work to be done in the next 7 days. So how can we avoid a government shutdown? How can we come to an agreement on immigration and spending within that amount of time when we have all of these controversies taking away the focus of the work?
Well, I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, I think there's a real uphill battle for lawmakers to do that. And in fact, it may be, just talking to sources on the Hill, an uphill battle to get a continuing resolution to punt once again for the 4th time, keeping funding where it is until, sometime, maybe mid-February, to try to tackle all of this again. I don't think that the chances went up for a broad deal by next Friday by what transpired over the last 24 hours. In fact, they went down, and I think the likelihood is that there's going to be a real push for a short-term deal once again to give them more time.
Yeah, that'll be 4 times in 4 months. Bret Baier, thank you so much for joining us. I know you have a lot of work to do. Something else could change in the interim, but we will watch you tonight, as always, on Special Report. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather.
President Trump signing a multi-billion-dollar bill into law to help rebuild our U.S. military. But the Defense Department will lose a lot of that money if Congress does not act quickly to repeal spending caps. Our Pentagon reporter Lucas Tomlinson joins us now. Lucas?
John, if the government shuts down next week, that means troops don't get paid, even those deployed to war zones. Now, if Congress does manage to pass a short-term spending bill known as a CR, that means that governments will be able to pay its troops, but the Pentagon says it needs to plan for the long term.
The longer a CR goes, the more damage it does. The president has already signed the National Defense Authorization Act, and it was passed by both houses overwhelmingly. So we need the $700 billion, and we're confident that the Congress will make a deal.
The Speaker of the House says continued budget cuts puts the U.S. military at risk.
This is actually costing us American lives. Last year, this nation lost 17 sailors aboard the USS John McCain and the USS Fitzgerald. Readiness shortfalls were serious factors in these fatal accidents, which happened on aging ships with expired training certifications. Every day that goes by without adequate funding is another day we are pushing our military past the breaking point. And it is a shameful situation.
Another looming crisis is ending the budget caps put in place by Congress in 2011. If those caps are not lifted, congressional aides tell me $100 billion will be stripped from the defense budget and put President Trump's plan to rebuild the military in jeopardy. For example, the head of Naval Aviation told Congress last month half his 542 F-18 Super Hornets can't fly right now. And, John, the Army is flying at its lowest level in 30 years. And if these budget cuts aren't repealed, more troops, they say, will continue to be killed as they were last year. Twice as many troops were killed in non-combat aviation crashes than they were the year before. And many say these budget cuts are to blame. John?
Yeah, and to say nothing of the collisions out in the Pacific involving those two Navy destroyers. There are suggestions that a lack of training is a big part of those very expensive and in terms of lives lost, costly accidents.
That's exactly what the Speaker of the House was mentioning, John.
All right. Lucas Tomlinson there at the Pentagon, where they are looking for that next budget. Lucas, thank you.
And in the meantime, a firestorm on Capitol Hill as remarks attributed to President Trump draw widespread condemnation from the left and the right. How the president is responding.
This is where